Good morning, everyone. I'm Dr. Mary Wilson. I'm the Vice Provost Teaching and Learning at Laurier. I want to begin by acknowledging that Wilfrid Laurier University's campuses are situated on the Haldimand Tract, on the traditional territory of the neutral Anishinaabe and Haudenosaunee peoples. Today, this land is home to many First Nations, Métis, and Indigenous people from across Turtle Island. Acknowledging them reminds us of our important connection to the land. We recognize, honor, and respect these nations as the traditional stewards of the lands and water on which Laurier is now present. Welcome to the Fall 2021 Town Hall. Today, members of Laurier's senior administration are here to answer questions about our planned and phased return to our campuses in the fall. We have with us today Dr. Deborah McClatchy, Laurier's President and Vice Chancellor, Dr. Tony Vanelli, Provost and Vice President Academic, Dr. Ivan Joseph, Vice President Student Affairs, and Dr. Jonathan Newman, Vice President of Research. We'll begin with opening remarks from Laurier's President, Dr. Deborah McClatchy. Following this, the panel will respond to questions submitted by students in advance of today's session, as well as questions received from the floor. There are just a few housekeeping items to remind everyone of before we begin. I want to remind you that this meeting will be recorded so that those who are unable to join us right now can watch it subsequently. And to respect everyone's privacy, audio and video is activated only for featured speakers. Closed captioning is available. To activate this feature, please click on the CC Live Transcript button that appears on the bottom of your Zoom screen. As you know, we invited people to pre-submit their questions. The organizers were delighted to receive almost 60 pre-submitted questions. As many of these pre-submitted questions focused on the same topic or theme, we've summarized and amalgamated them into 8 questions to allow for time for live questions as well. We'll begin with the pre-submitted questions. When we do open up for live questions, you can submit yours through the Q&A function. That button is also on the bottom of your Zoom screen. For live questions, we will answer the questions in the order received. As planning for fall is still taking place, we may not have answers to all of your questions today. However, we are committed to continuing to share information with you as it becomes available. Please note, to allow for a focused conversation on the return to campus plans, we will only be taking questions related to fall 2021 today. Later this year, there will be a broader town hall with the opportunity to ask questions about anything related to Laurier. With all of that said, I'd now like to welcome Laurier's President and Vice Chancellor, Dr. Deborah McClatchy, to say a few words.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. I want to begin by acknowledging all of our students for your continued resiliency and commitment to your studies, research, and co-curricular and extracurricular activities. Over the last 12 months, I've been inspired by the ways that students have risen to the challenges and uncertainty presented by a global pandemic. I know that recent news of the surge in COVID-19 cases and the province-wide state of emergency may feel like a setback in bringing the coronavirus under control. However, I remain confident that the accelerating vaccine rollout will change the trajectory of the pandemic in the near future. It is with this hope that Laurier's leaders have been busy preparing for fall 2021. Last week, I sent an email update to students on the progress of our planning. As you know, for fall 2021, it's our goal to support in-person teaching, learning, research, and student experience. By winter 2022, our goal is to return to regular operations with minimal restrictions. In saying this, all of our in-person activities must also operate under the guidance of public health. We will follow capacity limits to allow for physical distancing. Because of this, we are preparing for multiple scenarios with different possible restrictions in place. For in-person classes, priority will be given to those with significant levels of interaction and hands-on learning, those typically capped at 100 or fewer students, and first year and multi-section courses where both virtual and in-person sections can be offered. Fall courses are intended to finish the way they start. If a course starts remotely, it will remain remote until the end of the term. If a course starts in person, it will remain in person unless public health requirements necessitate a move to remote. Our academic leaders are finalizing which classes will be offered in person and which virtual. Course lists will be shared with students at the end of May. We also intend to offer as much as possible in-person student services, co-curricular and extracurricular activities as possible. For residences, we will be communicating details about capacity with students in May. As we begin our gradual and staged transition back to more in-person activities, I know that you will continue to have questions. We are committed to providing you with regular updates on planning for fall. You can find the most up-to-date information on the COVID-19 page on wlu.ca. Additionally, beginning in May, Laurier will launch a weekly What You Need to Know for Fall email, which will be delivered to your inboxes each Thursday. I hope that news of Laurier's planned return to our campuses brings you hope and optimism. I'm very much looking forward to seeing our campuses come alive with students once again, and I know that many of you are looking forward to the in-person interactions with your peers and instructors. Thank you once again for attending our town hall. I'm now going to turn the mic back to Dr. Wilson so we can begin the Q&A portion.
Thank you, President McClatchy. I'll now begin with the pre-submitted questions. As mentioned previously, many of the questions focused on the same topics, so we have amalgamated some to avoid repetition. We'll now begin with some of the pre-submitted questions to allow time for attendees to submit live questions in the Q&A box, and then I'll move to taking live questions subsequently. The first question is directed toward Dr. Tony Benelli, Provost and Vice President Academic. Tony, a student asks, will all classes have a virtual option for those students who do not feel safe or comfortable returning to campus in the fall?
Okay. Thank you, Mary, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for being here this morning. While we are planning to offer as many in-person classes as possible this fall 2021, students who are unable to learn in person in the fall term for a number of reasons could still satisfy their program requirements by taking courses in a different order. For example, choosing any courses or electives offered remotely in the fall and leaving courses only offered in person for the winter term, where there will be much more teaching in person, would be a way to solve this challenge. Note there are some programs that will require in-person learning and teaching. Students in these programs will receive direct communication. We have tried to design the fall term course offerings so that students who are able to return to campus have opportunities to participate in courses in person. Because of public health restrictions that we expect to be in place, there will be significant number of courses offered in remote format or online. This means that those who are unable to return to campus will have the access to sufficient remote and online courses to fill out their schedule. It's important to note that the fall term courses are intended to finish the way they start for the duration of the term, whether that be in person or remote, unless public health requirements necessitate an in-person course needs to move to remote. Some labs and studio lab courses will be offered in person. However, we will need to adhere to gathering limits and other potential restrictions. Graduate programs and courses will differ in the kinds of on-campus activities they will require. Your program will provide more specific expectations about the fall in advance of course registration. Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, Dr. Benelli, for that answer. I have another question that serves as a follow-up to that one. If an online option is offered in addition to an in-class option, what will that look like? Will all classes have a proper online option, or will they be live streaming the in-class lecture?
No, in general, each course will be taught in either a remote or an in-person format, but not both. Faculties have selected courses for in-person delivery according to several criteria. Labs, studios, and other classes emphasizing hands-on learning. Classes of fewer than 100 students, as the president has indicated in her opening remarks. Selections of multi-section courses to enable students to access in-person or remote delivery. So in the case of these multi-section courses, students will have access to either in-person or remote. Elective courses that also provide these opportunities. The university will continue to offer, as I said again, a significant number of traditional online courses that can be completed fully asynchronously and which provide additional options for students seeking flexibility.
Thank you, Dr. Bonelli. I have another question here for you that's related to exams. Can we choose to take exams online while taking in-person classes?
The design of the course will determine the delivery mode of the exam. There will be a range of approaches to exams, some online, some in person, and some take home. But the format of exams will be determined by the course design rather than through student choice. Through the early part of the fall term, enrollment services will work closely with all the faculties in which the students are registered in the scheduling of exams according to the desired format of each individual professor. As in previous years, we will intend to post the fall final exam schedule by mid-October. Then you will see how the exams will be set up. Again, as a reminder, the public health guidelines at the time will need to be taken into consideration in facilitating any of these in-person exams for the well-being and safety of our students and employees, faculty, and staff.
Thank you, Dr. Bonelli. There are a few more academic related questions, which I'll get to in a moment. However, right now I'd like to move to some questions related to student life. This question is directed to Dr. Ivan Joseph, Vice President, Student Affairs. Dr. Joseph, how is the school planning to ensure study spaces are open to students that do require them? And what measures will be put in place to prevent any spread of COVID-19 when students use them?
Thanks, Mary, and welcome, Golden Hawks. You know, one of our priorities for the fall of 2021 is to ensure all our students feel comfortable and safe in our shared spaces, whether you live on campus or off campus. And we know in order for you to achieve your highest academic averages, study spaces are a key part of that component. We will have study spaces available to students this fall, as we have done this past year. What we will do is we'll continue to follow some strict COVID-19 cleaning protocols for the study spaces, which include enhanced cleaning of touch points between the folks that use them. Students have to book these spaces in advance, and those using these study spaces, you're going to most likely have to wear face masks that cover both your nose and mouth. Students will have to remain at their assigned study space to ensure physical distancing. Safety is our utmost priority. On our Brantford campus, we have significantly increased the amount of study spaces for students in this new area as well. We have a place called One Market, which has a capacity of up to 50 students to study in that space.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. I have another question for you in a moment, but first I want to mention that there are a lot of questions that are coming in the Q&A that are very specific to circumstances, and we can't answer each specific situation. So students are going to be encouraged to contact their course coordinators for answers to very specific circumstances. Now, Dr. Joseph, is there a plan to give second-year students an opportunity for a campus orientation, since many of us did not have a chance this year?
Yes, my heart goes out to all the second-year students. I have a son who's also in that same situation, and I know the challenges of of missing so many of the rituals that come with not just the university experience, but the closing of high school. The priority for us in student affairs is to foster a connection and a sense of belonging for our students. Laurier builds its reputation and takes great pride in creating a family community environment. And we don't do this by accident. We're going to be intentionally building and creating program for second-year students who have missed this rite of passage due to the pandemic. It's being planned right now as we speak. One of the things we're waiting for is that nothing for our second-year students without our second-year students' input. And so you'll find lots of students are going to be, lots of our workers or employees and our staff are reaching out to the second-year students to say, hey, is this what will fit your needs? While we have some ideas, we know that the community will create a better, more robust program. At the same time we're doing that, we're not throwing away all the public and health guidelines. We have to make sure that the students are safe, our university community is safe, our Waterloo and regional community is safe. So we'll make sure that this program adheres to the public health guidelines. But we're looking forward to creating as much as we can on-campus student orientation programs for those second-year students.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. I have one more question here about vaccines and return to our campuses. Will it be mandatory for a student to have had the COVID-19 vaccine prior to sitting in a classroom? Why or why not?
The good news is that the timelines currently established by the Ontario government indicate that everyone who wants to be vaccinated will have access to vaccines by July. And I would encourage anyone who can do so to get vaccinated. At this point, neither the federal nor the provincial government has indicated that vaccination will be mandatory, and no sector, not even health or long-term care facilities, have made vaccination a requirement for people to receive services or to work at these organizations. All our Ontario universities are monitoring the status of vaccination in the province and its role in our return to safe on-campus operations. So no, we will not be having mandatory vaccine prior to sitting in a classroom.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. I'm going to go back to Dr. Vanelli now with a few more academic related questions. This one is specific to the Brantford campus. Our Brantford classes as Brantford classes are significantly smaller than Waterloo, will Brantford's return to campus be considered differently?
Thank you for that question, Mary. Our campuses do share similarities as also have distinct differences, which is the focus on the question. We're working to use as much of our capacity of both campuses as possible, recognizing that, again, the gathering size restrictions that we're dealing with and physical distancing requirements reduce that capacity. So we're aiming for a degree of equity across the programs on both campuses and faculties. The classroom offering should be similar across both campuses. Students should consider all variables. And again, as you've indicated, Mary, should be consulting with the academic calendar and academic advisors for guidance.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. This one is from an international student. What supports will be put in place for international students who are outside the country and are not planning on returning to campus in the fall?
Again, this is one of the most difficult questions that we're all facing across all universities in Canada, including here at Wilfrid Laurier University. Since the university went remote last year, we have been trying to maintain our regular services and programs to international students, obviously online. Several supports will be made available to international students studying remotely outside of Canada this fall, including international orientation, LEAF Head Start program, immigration advising, peer mentorship, and job search and career consultation. So we're adding that and expanding it to make sure that these services are provided to international students.
Thank you, Tony. I'm going to start moving to the questions that we've received through the Q&A function in Zoom now. Tony, the first one is for you. How does it work for courses that have prerequisites? For example, if you need to take the first part of a course in the fall and the second part in the winter.
Right. I think that's one of the questions that we're dealing with the planning for the fall. Are all our faculties are mindful of the prerequisites that the students may have for fall and winter, and are looking at that specifically to make sure they're aligned in terms of in-person versus remote offerings, to make sure that students have access to both the prerequisite as well as taking the course. So in many cases, although I gave the first answer, it may not be possible, obviously, to flip those two. The faculties are very mindful of these required courses and are making every effort to align it to make sure the students can take those courses.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. The next question is for Dr. Joseph. How will students be able to eat safely, as they'll have to take off their masks to eat?
Great question. And so we've been doing this a lot this year. You know, all students at our campuses are required to abide by the protocols we have put in place to keep our community safe. So we'll continue to take a direction. And so one of the things that we're doing is in our eating areas, we have protocols such as physical distancing of 2 meters that are in place. Like our study spaces, dining areas have been enhanced cleaning protocols. We have excess hand sanitizer in a lot of stations. They're provided throughout the places. And additionally, our ventilation systems are regularly monitored to ensure they are working properly and effectively.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Dr. Vanelli, the next one is for you. How will you ensure that we can reorganize our program schedule if we aren't able to be on campus in the fall? If we graduate right after winter 2022, are you going to ensure that we can still graduate on time, even if we can't be in person for fall 2021?
These are the details, just very similar to the previous question I addressed, Mary, on the sequencing and prerequisites. It's the same aspect is really being looked at by all our academic leaders. And again, to be very clear to all the attendees today, especially the students, what we have done for the past several months is looked at all these requirements of both prerequisites required for courses, graduation times, especially for fourth-year students coming in, third-year students, normal progression that we want to achieve. So we're looking very significantly at we are looking very carefully at all these constraints and requirements, as well as what we're dealing with both in the fall, and as we said, in the winter, there'll be more likely a return to mostly in-person teaching. So we're aligning all of these factors in addressing those questions. On May 25th, near the end of the month, the schedule becomes available. Advisors from individual faculties and other academic leaders will be communicating clearly to all the students how to deal with progression, meeting requirements, graduation, etc. All of these will be addressed by the different faculties and in the university as a whole.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. Dr. Joseph, what would happen if there was a confirmed case on campus?
Thank you for that. You know, one of the things that we've had, and in this past, we've had some cases on campus. We have protocols that are in place. We work with public health to make sure that we're dealing with the issue appropriately. We have isolation on our campus as well, where we're moving students to the appropriate buildings. Any contact tracing, we work with public health to make sure that any students who've been in contact are also isolated. We adhere and we clean the processes and the facilities in a manner that to make sure that there is no spread, and we try and make sure that we keep our community safe.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. I have a question regarding career fair in the fall. Will Laurier be organizing a career fair that will provide orientation to students, especially international students who've missed out on getting to know Laurier and the career landscape in Canada? This would be easier to absorb had there been in-person learning. I think actually in part I can answer this question as career services and experiential learning is one of the areas of my portfolio. So we have found a great deal of success and uptake in virtual career fairs this past year using remote technologies that are specific for this purpose. We've experienced excellent participation rates from both employers and from students. And based on that success, we would hope to continue that format going forward. And certainly we are very interested in supporting our international students in gaining experience as well. There have been some initiatives undertaken even this summer looking for opportunities specific to our international students and to support their career experience in Canada. Thank you. All right, I have a question for Dr. Vanelli. Dr. Vanelli, can you discuss what changes are being made to improve the quality of remote classes?
Thank you for that, Mary. I think what we have learned through the past year, and certainly having gone through primarily remote delivery in the past year, we are looking at the instructors, faculties, and actually, Mary, through your office in teaching and learning, have been working very actively both on the delivery of the courses using asynchronous and synchronous modes, especially for course is remote, as we're talking about. Their instructors have learned with the engagement of students what works best and things that could be used to improve course delivery and impact, including assessment techniques. So all of this is being factored into the planning for this fall and indeed winter for courses that still will remain remote, to make sure the academic integrity and impact that we want to see being delivered to the students for their success is there. That's what we're trying to do this fall.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. Dr. Joseph, will all study spaces have to be booked beforehand?
Right now, that is the plan. Again, we have to make sure that we've got some level of contact tracing. We want to make sure that there's social distancing. We want to make sure that we have enough set up. And so currently, as we look to expand those study spaces, we want to make sure that people who show up for them, that we can service them. So that is the plan currently. We're also constantly looking to expand those study spaces. We're actually actively looking at how we might be able to move some of those outdoors for the fall.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. For Dr. Vanelli, when can students know which courses will be in person and which courses will be taken remotely?
Okay, thank you. Excellent question. The schedule will be mounted on March 25th. So at that point, for all of the students, you will be able to see how your courses will be delivered in the fall term. For example, there may be different features in a course that I'm using, for example, science or perhaps business courses, where you would have a lecture part and a tutorial or a lab component. And it might be indeed that you get it split, that the lecture part is taught on, I meant May 25th, not March 25th. That was my birthday. So I was at that top of mind. So it's May 25th. And so the courses will be, as of that date, courses will be taught. For example, a lecture might be remote because it's a very large class and will be delivered in the way it was perhaps last year. But the labs are mindful of the public health requirements, cleaning that is required before, between them, limitations in the lab will be more in person. So students will be able to see all of that. And then if they have questions, Mary, with exactly how that is to be delivered, advisors and the faculties will be providing supports for them to answer additional questions. So that's when everyone can expect everything to become live at that point.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. Students asking what will happen with courses that typically have class enrollments larger than 100 students. Will these classes still be offered in person, but just with fewer students in each class?
That's a very good question. Again, some of the deans and the faculties have been looking at some of these courses that are over 100 and actually splitting them as being suggested into smaller classes. So we're doing some of that going forward. It depends on the individual courses. That's still being worked on to make sure that students do have the opportunity to take an in-person aspect of that course in a smaller section, and given the restrictions of classes, as you would know, because of the number of students that we can put in them. So this is all being done. We're into the final stages through registration and enrollment and schedule development right now, and all of these factors are being looked at, Mary.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. I just want to remind our students that a lot of the questions that are coming in are related to very specific circumstances, and that we can't answer each specific situation. Students are really encouraged to contact their course coordinators for answers to very specific circumstances. Dr. Joseph, the next question is for you. Are graduation ceremonies still going to happen in person when it's safe to do so?
Soon as it is safe to do so, we look forward to having in-person graduation ceremonies. We know how big a milestone that is for yourselves as students and your families. And at Laurier, we look forward to celebrating that opportunity with students soon as it is safe to do so.
Thank you. I'm just waiting for the next question to arrive here. This one is for Dr. Vanelli. During the pandemic, a large number of students have struggled academically in maintaining their GPA. What is Laurier doing to ensure that students can continue to progress given the negative impacts of COVID-19?
Yeah, excellent question. The university, I think, the university without question has made every effort to be very compassionate under these circumstances because of what students have been dealing with their programs and their progression. Since the beginning of the pandemic, we have looked at giving a CR credit for students that have had challenges in courses where they to allow them to progress normally. And as you know, starting from the beginning of last year, when the pandemic started, the CR credit has been used by, has been offered by the university, actually fairly uniquely in Ontario. We're from a small set of schools that have chosen to use this as one of the requirements of being very compassionate with the students. This afternoon at Senate, we are looking at extending that further from fall and winter into summer and possibly next fall, as long as we are in the pandemic, to look at this CR credit as one of the mechanisms for dealing with this. I also want to add, though, and just for the benefit of everyone, and working with the deans, working in communicating what their faculty members are dealing with, faculty members communicating directly with me or my office, the VPA's office. Faculty members also have been very compassionate in working with their schedules, the delivery of the program, lectures, to allow the students a little bit more time for submitted assignments, etc., to allow the students to make sure that they have the time dealing with very under these circumstances, especially in remote delivery. So the university has taken both official measures, as I said, through the CR credit, and then through the delivery of the individual courses and programs. The university across the board has been very engaged and sympathetic with students while maintaining the academic standards for all students that are going through the programs.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. Dr. Vanelli, a student's asking, what if I have remote classes and I'm living off campus, but I have an in-person tutorial scheduled? Will I be required to attend these while living at home?
Okay, I think those are decisions. Again, it's a specific question, Mary, that we would have to look at in terms of making sure that the accessibility of the student to take that course is in hand. So we would have to look at the logistics of doing that. Again, everyone, you need to bear in mind, we are looking at the fall, which is still a mixture of increased in person. That's what we're talking about this morning, but still quite a bit more remote. With the winter term, there will be much more in person. So being nearby campus, on campus, and residents being an apartment, if you're away from Kitchener-Waterloo or Brantford, decisions have to also be made by students because of these realities that we are looking at. So just bear in mind, the whole academic year is beyond the fall term too.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. Dr. Joseph, if a student in a class tests positive, will that entire class have to go remote during an isolation period?
Oh, geez, great question. So now we're talking hypothetical, but again, we'll take our direction by public health in terms of what we should be doing there. It will all determine on the contact tracing and who's been in contact with that person and that individual and what close contact. If we're doing the mass protocols, right now, my assumption would be yes, but again, we would be guided by public health onto what action we would need to take.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. Students are asking if they should be looking for places to live in the fall close to campus.
That is, again, a decision they would have to make. I think you need to look at the schedule as it comes out in the next few weeks. That certainly will guide some of the decisions that they will be making. So it's really looking at what becomes available, what your program will look like. If it's primarily remote, obviously you have much more latitude. If there's more remote instruction or courses in it, then decisions would have to be made on that. It also depends on distancing and personal reasons or that students would have to factor in, which we can't advise completely, that is for sure.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to add, one of the things I think it's important to note that even though the classes part of that will be remote and some pieces are hybrid or whatever, we are planning to still have on-campus activities. And I think that's a really important piece. Again, not saying whether you should or shouldn't move, but in the fall, we want to have those things that create meaningful connections, where you build relationships, where you build your network. We are going to look to actively pursue those things within the public health and safety guidelines, but as a priority in the student affairs office. So while some of you might want to make your decisions purely on, am I in the classroom or am I out of the classroom? Don't forget a big part of that is building community and finding your people. That's still an important part of your university experience. And we're committed to trying to deliver that to you this fall.
Yeah. And again, to add to what Dr. Joseph just said, both academically and enhanced with it, it's the total student experience that we're looking at. Is we really want to re-engage as an academic community to be working together in person. That is the direction we're going. So if it's just picking on the courses, Dr. Joseph is right, that's one part of it, but it's the whole package that you have to factor in your decision making.
Thank you both. We have a good question that I imagine we should begin with you, Dr. Vanelli. Students are asking how class times will be staggered, and will there be cohort groupings for students?
Right. The classes will have more of a gap between them. I think we are looking right now and talking to our registrar, Jennifer Casey, a minimum of 30 minutes between classes. And this is to allow for proper cleaning protocols to be followed inside the classrooms. Classrooms will have an enter mode, so students will know which part of the class they're coming in and exiting to allow a seamless transition between classes, and to allow cohorts in some cases will be managed so that they're together. We are indeed looking at that as part of the planning here, but there will be staged separation between classes, as we said, for the cleaning that is required to assure, because of the classes that we're looking at, and to prep them for students to come in. This will also apply even more intensely with the laboratories and other smaller areas where the students have hands-on specialized equipment they may be touching or handling. So all of this is being factored in the schedule as you will have before you, and we will be communicating in detail how this will happen, with each of your courses and program and within your programs.
Thanks. I have a question that's sort of an extension of that. So seeing as Laurier is a relatively small campus, how will we ensure that students are physically distancing? So for example, the hallway in the arts building near the solarium was often crowded with students pre-COVID. So what will we be doing during the fall term?
Okay, I don't have the complete details with for that kind of a question, but what we will be doing is to make sure in areas where there would be a lot of traffic or a lot of students. Part of what we were going to absolutely make sure is that we want to have the distancing in all throughout the university as going forward. Now, again, I'm new to the university. It is a smaller university compared to some others, certainly that we're dealing with. We're going to be factoring that in with the scheduling to minimize that traffic in these very publicly visible areas that are normally surrounded by many students. The other parts we have to remember is we will be requiring masking through the fall term, so students will be masked. We're hoping that many of the students will have received, and employees and any of the anyone that is on campus will be vaccinated at that time to mitigate it. But the main thing is to make sure that we try to assure the distancing, which we are working at.
Absolutely, thank you. Yes, and hand hygiene is the other factor that we have to attend to, and we know that
Exactly.
we've got lots of locations in which you can maintain hand hygiene throughout the campus as well. The next question is for Dr. Joseph. How will students living at home be able to participate in extracurriculars and clubs if they are in person in their offerings? How is that staying accessible to those who can't attend in-person events?
You know, one of the things that the pandemic has taught us as we've pivoted is there are some hits and home runs that we have found, some things that we didn't know that if delivered virtually would be more accessible and I'd say better and stronger. So the lessons that we've learned in our co-curricular program in these student activities and these student clubs, we will keep. That is for sure. And so rest assured that each club is taking a look at those things right now and asking what are the lessons that we've learned that we need to keep that will create a more enhanced and enriched student experience. So I don't know what each one of those clubs are, but recognize that we are looking to keep some of those things. Each club, just like each professor or each classroom, will dictate what those things are. And again, so I'll give you an example. We've learned that some people prefer fitness classes over virtual. They love their Zumba class from their living room. So we will continue to run parallel programming there. Zumba class on campus, socially distanced, maybe outdoors, maybe in the gym with limited people, but also online. We've also learned the same thing about some of our counseling services and our health services that we deliver to our folks.
Absolutely. Thanks very much, Dr. Joseph. Dr. Vanelli, is there a general sense of which faculties would be fully online or fully in person in the fall?
It's actually a mixture. That's a good question. It's actually a mixture. Everyone, in looking at it at this time, we have all the faculties that have, it seems like a similar percentage of courses that are in person and remote, but that doesn't mean much because we're looking at the specifics of the delivery mode in different faculties that vary. And so we're looking at different models here on how it's delivered, but it does vary also in terms of the different types of courses that may have lab or tutorial requirements. So we're looking at all of that, but it's generally all the faculties are offering a combination of in-person and remote, but there are some variations in the delivery mode because of the size of some of the faculties, the courses they have to deliver, like LSBE and many of the BBA students in those programs have huge class sizes that they're dealing with compared to others that have much smaller sizes, or in science where you have a mixture of lectures and as I said, in labs that we're trying to factor in at the same time. So it does turn out to be kind of balanced, but it's different for each faculty.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. A student is asking, how can we prepare for the spring 2021 term and what courses we want to take? If that depends on what courses will be offered in the fall and the winter of this coming year.
That's a good question. Most of the courses, of course, are remote, and I think what we will be doing, this is a takeaway for today, is the timing is to make sure that given where the fall is going in in summer term, for example, with BBA students, that is a full term for many of those students. We will look at specific faculties to make sure there's alignment going into the fall term. So we will be following up on that, Mary.
Thank you very much. I think the next question is for Dr. Joseph, and I can add a little bit of information to this one as well, Dr. Joseph. Students are asking, if you're medically exempt from wearing a mask, will this be respected and permitted? And we've received an answer that indicates that we will honor those, but we can't yet say exactly how this would happen because it hasn't yet happened for a student. And that we'll likely manage this on a case-by-case basis through the deans of students' offices as the first point of contact. Dr. Joseph, do you have anything to add to that particular question?
No, I think that's a thorough answer, Mary. Again, lots of different accommodations will have to come on place this fall, no different than any fall. And we'll take all of those on a case-by-case basis, and we do our best to make those accommodations, not just for the health and safety of the individual requesting them, but also considering the health and safety of our community members as well.
Thank you. Dr. Vanelli, how will it be ensured that students who can attend in person have an equitable opportunity to register for in-person classes, as it is predictable that those would fill up rather quickly at the time of registration, or is it just going to be a first come, first served basis?
Again, an excellent question. I do want to clarify from my last answer about Sprummer, which was important, and it's always important to add to it. Your academic advisors are really there to prepare you for both the Sprummer planning for the courses in that term, as well as in the fall term. So just to remind students looking that your academic advisors are there for you. For this particular one, for in-person, or an equity or all question, it depends on the course that we're looking at. So in many of the multi-section courses, in those ones where there might be a mixture of in-person or remote, we are trying to be very equitable based on demand that would be there, that we might have to adjust by a couple of sections because there is that availability. But in many of the courses, the majority of the courses, it is that single in-person course that is required for the students taking that program or a degree that they're focusing on. So as I said, we will try to work again through the advisors to accommodate the needs to make sure it's balanced for what students are trying to get in their education, both in person as well as remotely as we go forward.
Thank you, Dr. Vanelli. Our students are asking really good questions. So one of our students is wondering, for our students who will not be able to enter Canada due to travel restrictions, for both the fall and the winter, will there be options provided for them in the winter of 2022 as well?
Yes, we're going to have to, we're looking at exactly what that will look like, because there is a reality that in the winter term, as the student is asking, that reality is there, that they can still not be here and want to attend the programs. So we're going to be making all the arrangements we can to see what we can do to make sure program delivery is there for those students. It does vary if you're a graduate student versus an undergraduate student because of the differences in the programs that you'll be taking. And we are looking at all of that at the same time, both for international students or possibly domestic students that are somewhere else in the world and can't get back to Canada because of where we are with the pandemic and the country they may be in. I don't know the individual circumstances. We will try to accommodate them.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vanelli. Dr. Joseph, can we expect on-campus food and beverage places to be open?
Absolutely. This current year, our on-campus food and beverage places have been open and continue to serve our student population, and they will do so in the upcoming year. In fact, you will be seeing a newly renovated Starbucks on campus that's being worked on right now, and we look forward to serving our students in all our facilities.
Wonderful. I'm just checking to see if there are any other questions coming in here. Dr. Vanelli, I think that there are students who have joined us late, and they're asking us to comment again on a question that was asked really early on. So could you address once again, will all classes have a virtual option for those students who do not feel safe or comfortable returning to campus in the fall?
Sure, I'll repeat my answer to that question. So just give me a moment and I'll get right back to it. And I want to respond the same way I did initially. So just give me a moment so I don't mind repeating that. It's an important question. Okay, so again, for the students who are late, and thank you for being here. While we are planning to offer as many in-person classes as possible in the fall, students are unable to learn in person in the fall term could still satisfy their program requirements by taking courses in a different order. Given the questions we've just heard in the ensuing time, program advisors, faculties will making appropriate steps to allow how this different order might look for your program. For example, choosing any courses or electives offered remotely in the fall and leaving courses only offered in person for the winter term is one solution. Note that there are some programs that will require in-person learning. Students in these programs will receive direct communication, like education and some other professional programs. We also have tried to design the fall term offerings so that students who are able to return to campus have an opportunity to participate in the courses in person. And as Dr. Joseph said, also outside the classroom to have the student experience that we want to return to. Because of public health restrictions that we expect to be in place, there will be a significant number of courses offered in remote format. This means that those that are unable to return to campus will have access to sufficient remote and online courses to fill out their schedule. That is what we are endeavoring to achieve here. It is important to note that fall term courses are intended to finish the way they start for the duration of the term. Instructors will either teach in person for the whole term, unless public health dictates that we need to stop that and go back to fully remote. Some labs and studio lab courses will be offered in person. However, we will still need to adhere to gathering limits and any other potential restrictions. And graduate programs will differ, as has been discussed this morning, in the kinds of on-campus activities they require. Your program will provide more specific expectations about the fall in advance of course registration, including for students, as was indicated, the one question for the students who came in late, for summer courses to align it with the fall and next winter. So that's the answer to that question.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vanelli. For students who have joined us later, welcome. Please don't feel as though you have absolutely missed out on components of this. This session is being recorded and it will be made available to you subsequently. But we are seeing a lot of questions coming in about whether or not vaccines will be mandatory. So Dr. Joseph, could you answer that question once again, please?
Yeah, absolutely. Vaccines will not be mandatory. It is our hope, and what we're seeing and hearing is that many students will have the opportunity to be vaccinated before July. We take our direction both from the provincial government, national government. Nobody has made mandatory vaccination a thing for anybody to work or study. And we will continue to make sure we'll pay attention to the public health guidelines and follow their direction there. So we look forward to having you on our campus this fall, or virtually studying from home.
And very much in keeping with our desire to have our students back together again as a community in person as well as remotely, our students are asking about orientation again. Could you also comment on that, Dr. Joseph.
Yeah, one of the things that Laurier takes its reputation and takes great pride in is creating a tight, cohesive campus community that makes it feel like family. We don't, we take that comment, we're all Golden Hawks, very seriously. And so one of our priorities in student affairs, and as well as in the senior leadership administration, is how do we make sure that we build connections and build community and build that reputation that Laurier is known for. We will be having orientation physically on campus. We're having a special second-year orientation on campus for all those students who have missed things. One of the things people have asked me is, will those orientations be mixed? And no, we'll have a separate first-year orientation for new incoming students, and we'll have a second-year orientation for those students who have missed out last year. Even if you were at students or you were on campus last year, we'll still have an orientation for you that you might want to take. For those who are grad students, there'll be internationals, there'll be graduate students orientation for those folks as well. And again, you heard me slip international in there. We're making sure that every student group that needs an orientation will have one, and it's quite a robust program.
Thank you, Dr. Joseph. I think we're going to wrap it up shortly, but I also wanted to thank all of our students for your resilience, for your dedication to your studies, for your engagement in your courses and in the life of the university and our community over this past year. You've endured unprecedented challenges in persisting in your studies. And we are inordinately proud of you, and we hope that you are also proud of what you've accomplished this past year. So we've reached the hour that we've set aside for the Fall 2021 Town Hall. I want to thank all of you for attending today and for posing such excellent questions. As a reminder, this event was recorded and it will be available for viewing in a few days. You'll receive an email with a link to the recording. For the most up-to-date information on the pandemic, please visit wlu.ca/coronavirus. Following this event, we will create an FAQ page where the questions and answers from the town hall will be posted. And additionally, in May, Laurier will begin sharing weekly email updates about our fall 2021 plans. Once again, thank you so much for your attendance and your engagement today, and best wishes as you finish out the winter term.